The earlier point, what does this move tell you about Nikola Jokic and where things stand with him in the team?
Well, this is an extremely nuanced situation when you have a firing with a star like this. The difference between the star having influence and the star being able to stop it are two totally different things. So, do I think that Nikola Jokic found out about this when Shams tweeted? No. I think he absolutely knew it was coming. Does that mean that he bears responsibility? No. So I think those two things have to be taken apart. And I see this with social media with fans. Often it's not. But in the bigger picture, Graz, Nikola Jokic is in his prime. This is a team that was a championship team 2 years ago. Right now, they're looking like they could be in the play-in. That is not the direction that you want to be going with a player like Nikola Jokic. He has never done anything but show loyalty to Denver, but he's never faced a drama situation like this in the organization. So now they have to execute something during the season. They have to execute a coaching hire, and they have to execute a general manager hire that will optimize Nikola Jokic's prime. And that means that the Nuggets are on the line here as they deal with their franchise superstar.
Yeah. This is such a fascinating story for so many different reasons. I'm sure they talked to Jokic because it would be just business malpractice, just from an ownership, standpoint, and just running a business, like it would be malpractice, right? You would have to talk to multiple players, your main players, for you not to discuss this with them a little bit and be like, what are your thoughts on this? Would be just absolute, just malpractice. I mean, it would just be insane. But the one thing though is that when you're someone like Jokic, who obviously is not, who's obviously not born and raised in America, just the way he talks, the culture, some of the language barrier, right? It's not like broken English, but it's obviously not 100% clear English. When you're conducting business like that, I just feel like it's going to be, especially if you're talking about someone who's mega wealthy and owns, the franchise and is running the franchise, you're going to listen to his input a little bit different, right? If it was like Steph Curry or LeBron James or even like a Damian Lillard, for instance, if they were like, do not fire Coach Malone, like, do not fire him, I want him here, okay? Like, keep him here. I feel like it's just going to hit differently than if it's Nikola Jokic talking, right? Just because of the language barrier, the culture barrier. It's just going to feel different, whether it's right or wrong. Again, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do or that it's appropriate, but I'm just saying psychologically, that's the way I see that unfolding more. So I see someone like a Jokic have less of an impact, less of an influence on what ownership can do in that regard. And again, I have no idea what Jokic's feelings were towards this firing, if he wanted it or if he wanted him to stay, and they were still kind of like, no, it doesn't seem like Windhorst even 100% knows either. And that's, again, part of that is because of Jokic's camp, again, it's such a more, tight-lipped group. Again, because of the culture, language, it's just different, right? He runs in different circles. He doesn't even live in America full time. So it's just different. But the thing is with a firing like this, and you have Jokic, and you're saying, listen, Jokic is in his prime. He's one of the best basketball players ever. He's playing unbelievable, and you might be in the play-in. I don't know if you can blame the coaching on that though, right? A part of that is roster construction. Is the players on the court. I don't know if this is fundamentally a coaching issue. Now you can still have issues with the coaching and with how Michael Malone is as a person and how he, built the culture in Denver. But it doesn't mean that he's 100% responsible for why they might be in the play-in tournament right now. Like, multiple things can be true in that regard. This is definitely a layered issue. But my whole thing is that when you fire a coach, it's one thing if in the NFL, I think it's a little bit easier to kind of just let a coach go because you have so many of these coaches in the wings. There's always some great offensive coordinator up and coming or a great college coach that's, potentially looking to enter in the NFL. Like, there's always some sort of move, some interesting move that you can make that you can hire. Again, especially if you have, like, we can use Jokic as an example. Like, if you have a great quarterback, but your coach is not good in the NFL, like, there's someone who you could hire. You could be like, listen, so and so has been great with quarterbacks at at USC. Like, let's bring him here. Or again, a great this great corner did an awesome job with Geno Smith. Let's bring him here. Like, there's just actual concrete options to do. It's not the same thing in the NBA. It's why you consistently keep seeing so many coaches get rehired and hired and hired. Doc's like getting hired every 5 seconds. Like, it's just not the same thing. You don't just jump and hire a big hot shot college coach. And a lot of college coaches don't necessarily even want to do that because of all the power and money that they make in college. And there are no great OCs in the wings waiting in the NBA that you're like, oh, this is a great assistant coach. We're going to bring him in and we have, high expectations. It's just not like that. That's why JJ Redick got hired literally off of, talking out of on a mic. So it's just different. That would almost never happen in the NFL. You're just never going to hire someone necessarily from the booth like that. And I know, what was it, Saturday, who did that with the Colts, and that was like seen as like the most insane thing. That was like what are they doing? Like, this is the most absurd, insane thing ever. And it was done by one of the craziest, most over the top owners there is in all of sports, quite frankly. So it's just not a normal thing. So when you fire someone like this, it's just like you have to know what your exit strategy is. Like, what is your plan? Quite frankly, if you have a coach like Malone, you should already know who you're going to hire. But unless Malone was truly that toxic, I had a boss years and years ago where I was working 2 jobs at the time, and my one main job I really hated. It was when I was working at a rehab, men's inpatient rehab facility, and it was just burning me out so much. And my other boss, which was like when I was like working at a parking garage, he was like, I was like, I really want to leave this job, and he's like, okay, but like you need to know where you're going to next. You can't just quit. You can't have a gap in your resume. He was like kind of talking about it through that lens, and I was like, all right, fine. I'll try to see where else I can go. And so I was trying to find other stuff. I couldn't find other stuff. And I was just like, I went back to him, and this was probably like a couple months later, and I was just like, I just hate this job so much. And he's like, well, listen, I know I told you that you shouldn't quit unless you have something else lined up. He's like, but if this job is just essentially, just destroying your soul, like, you're better off just quitting. You're better off just quitting and dealing with any of the other like resume or professional issues that you might have. He's like, I can give you hours here. Obviously, you're not going to make a ton of money working at this parking garage. He's like, but like I can give you hours, so we can, you'll have some money at least coming in. He's like, but if you need to just quit this job and it's going to be better for your soul, then just do it. And that's, to me, what potentially happened with the Nuggets here, where they're like, yeah, we know this is not ideal. We know we're going into the playoffs. We know we won a ring with them a couple of years ago. We don't have exactly who we want to hire next, and same thing with the GM, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? We got to get Malone out of the building at this point. Any second too late. Any second more, and it's too late. The harm is already continuing to get done. So to me, and I kind of said this in one of my previous videos, to me that just signals that they really see Malone as essentially a monster. Seriously, I don't mean to be too extreme with the language here, but like, they see him as essentially like a monster, as just a toxic monster that is just awful for this team. Because otherwise you would keep him to at least the end of the playoffs. You would have to. Even if they weren't even making the playoffs, and let's say this was a team at the bottom of the barrel, you would still just let him finish out the next few games to the end of the season. So it's just like the timing is what makes this so fascinating. And they were kind of saying, oh, well, there was kind of a war between, a Cold War, I think it was said, between the GM and Malone and stuff like that. And it's just like, and so they didn't want to pick sides, so they just fired them both. Again, it's not something that you would do on April 8th or April 7th, whatever the official day was. Like, you just wouldn't do it in this moment of time. So to me, again, that just signals so loud and clear that they just saw that they thought Malone was absolute poison and essentially a monster. And they were like, we have to get him out of the building right now. And maybe if we do that, we can save this season. We can actually make a playoff run. We can, go on a little bit of a run for these final few games and get out of the play-in tournament, or avoid the play-in tournament, etc., etc. And we'll figure out everything else later. I don't know who we're gonna hire as a head coach, but anyone's better than Malone at this point. Like, and if that's their feelings, like that's pretty damning then at that point. You know, it's pretty strong. And like it was reported that they would have fired him a couple years ago, that they didn't like him, but then he won the ring. You know, he won a ring, and then you were just like, all right, well, you kind of have to keep him at that point then, at least for a year or so. So yeah, just really, really fascinating stuff. I mean, winning does hide a lot of issues, and if you're winning, it's like, all right, we kind of have to keep you. And if you're, the moment you lose, the moment there's a crack in that, it's just open season. But this continues to be such a wild story, honestly. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the firings of the Denver Nuggets, and the question whether or not Nikola Jokic knew? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.